Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, the Teal Mask has been out for a couple weeks now, and I wanted to break down kind of what I thought about the Pokemon's third DLC and the first DLC for Scarlet and Violet. Let's get started. The Teal Mask takes place in a remote area known as Kitakami. We aren't exactly sure where it takes place, but my guess is probably somewhere outside of Paldea. We know that the Blueberry Academy is outside of Unova, but they never say specifically where this place is. Throughout the land, we find multiple Pokemon that's not in the base game, such as Janma, Lotad. Honestly, the Pokemon that Gamefreak put into this part of the DLC, I think are really solid picks just overall. They've also included ways to introduce Pokemon from Legends Arceus, which I do find is kind of a real interesting idea. You have stuff like Hisuian and Growlithe, Hisuian Basculin, which is the Watch-dropped, Basculegion, and you can even evolve Hisuian Basculin into Basculegion. And most importantly, Ursaluna, which we'll get to kind of later on. The region itself is beautiful with a ton of new landscapes such as small caves, a nice Oni head for a mountain, a lot of different biomes and plains with a lot of sources of water. Kitakami is such a nice area to explore. Even now, there's so many like hidden details and hidden caves and stuff I'm just now finding. My only complaint with the region is that it's kind of small compared to the base game, and it seems smaller than the Crown Tundra, but it does seem larger than the Isle of Armor. And while the region itself is small, it does make up for just how diverse the area is, with having some of the best music Pokemon's had for a field theme, in my opinion, for a very long time. You actually just lose track of time just wandering around and searching for things. The Teal Mask story is one of the strongest stories in Pokemon, and honestly it's probably the strongest story told in a Pokemon DLC, which isn't very hard because the Isle of Armor really didn't have much of a story, and the Crown Tundra also really didn't have much of a story. While I do wish this was in the base game, as it connects the mystery of terrestrialization and the story largely revolving around the Loyal 3, the game sets you up on going on a group study project in the land of Kitakami, where you and 3 of your classmates join you. When you arrive, you're instantly greeted by 2 new rivals, Kieran and Carmine, who we'll also talk about later. You end up getting paired with Kieran, and are tasked to take pictures of the village lore which can be found throughout the land of Kitakami on little wooden posts. During this journey, you learn of the tale of the Loyal 3 and the Ogre. The story itself is simple. The Ogre attacked the village and the Loyal 3 protected it. You soon learn that the story passed down was a lie, and that Ogerpon was actually the hero. While this isn't some insane twist, it was one that I actually saw coming, I still really enjoyed how simple it was. As someone who wasn't super sold on Ogerpon, the story really warmed me up to her, and she became one of my favorite sub-legendaries actually at the end of the journey. And I do wish the story was a little longer. You can probably beat it in roughly 5 hours if you don't get sidetracked like me and take 12 hours just to explore the land. While the main story is amazing for Pokemon DLC, the side quests are actually also pretty good compared to base game. I do think they still take a step back from Legends Arceus, but they're at least interesting enough to where I do want to talk about it. There are 3 side quests in the DLC I specifically wanted to talk about. The first one is probably one of the harder side quests, and it's not hard for being hard to do, but it's actually challenging, which is actually defeating the Ogre clan. Each clan member has a really solid team, taking advantage of weather in some cases, have a high level cap, and actually have battle strategies, which you don't see throughout the main game at all. Another small but an okay side quest is the Bill and Onair side quest. You find them roaming around Kitakami. After defeating them so many times, you actually get some really pretty unique rewards. The best side quest, though, is the one involving Perrin. So Perrin is an ancestor from Adamant from Legends Arceus. This side quest takes you back through the Thomas Wood, catching photos of Pokemon that are native there. Her goal is to take a picture of a rare Pokemon found in Hisui, which is the Blood Moon Ursaluna. And this thing is a beast. You get to fight it like it's a Titan Pokemon, and it hits hard. It's easily one of the best and most rewarding side quests that a Pokemon has done. I wish the Legendary Mythicals are actually treated like this side quest, though, as while it is super short, it's also super fun, and you end up learning a lot about Perrin, about how she has this drought from taking pictures, and I would love to see her again in the next DLC. Rivals in this game have never been stronger than the base game, with Arven, Nemona, and Peony to the new DLC characters Carmine and Kieran. Let's start with Carmine. When you first get introduced to her in the game, she instantly wants to battle and acts like a big, tough character. She has some of the best facial expressions a Pokemon character has to date, and her team honestly wasn't too bad either late game, although Kieran's was better. As the story goes on, you learn that she just wants to protect her village from turning into a tourist attraction. During the DLC, you end up spending a good bit of time with Carmine in Act 2 of the DLC, while Kieran kinda takes a backseat. And you really get to learn that she's just a really protective sister who wants the best for her village and younger brother. Kieran is probably the most interesting character in the DLC, and probably the most interesting rival in a Pokemon game in a long time, if ever. He's a character that's a very timid boy at first, having trouble talking to strangers. As a matter of fact, his sister has to speak for him for the very first part of the game. During the course of your journey, he opens up to you and ends up talking about how he likes Ogerpon. While none of the village does like Ogerpon, he thinks it's just a misunderstood creature. During the night of the festival, you encounter Ogerpon with his sister Carmine. During the scene, Ogerpon drops his mask and you end up picking it up with her. The next day, you take it to Kieran and Carmine's grandpa, who tells the true story of Ogerpon and how Ogerpon was the hero all along, but Carmine actually wants to keep this a secret from Kieran. What she doesn't know, though, is Kieran was actually listening in on this conversation. Kieran overhears you and starts to think that your character is going behind him, talking about him behind his back, along with his sister. Throughout the rest of your journey, Kieran becomes bitter and resents your character, so much as stealing the mask, challenging your character to battle for it, and tries to battle you and better you in every step of the way. After you finish the game, you're given a chance to catch Ogerpon, just like how a typical Pokemon game goes, but it doesn't work exactly like that because you need to battle Kieran for the victory. His team is actually really strong, although it does have a few ice weaknesses. Of course, you'll end up winning the fight and Kieran's run off, not to be seen again and missing from everyone's departure to Blueberry Academy. The next shot you see of him is him seething with rage, wanting to get better and to make sure not to lose to you. From a character standpoint, I love this. He goes from this meek boy to someone who wants power, won't stop until he gets it. He wants to actually become the very best. It wouldn't surprise me if he ends up being the champion at Blueberry Academy. The Teal Mask, while it isn't perfect, is a step in the right direction for Pokemon. I know Gamefreak is super rushed, and I would love for him to delay the games to work on them just a little bit longer, so we don't have as much of a mess as this one when it comes to performance and frame rate. But a lot of that is tied to the Pokemon Company and how they're structured. Overall, though, I really enjoyed what Kitakami had to offer. It has some of the cleanest and the most enjoyable story, while even though it is short, I had a lot of fun with it. It probably has the best rival in a Pokemon game to date, just from the base game with Arven, Penny, and Nimona, compared to the DLC when you've got Kieran and Carmine, and the region itself has a ton of fun to explore. I just wish they would put a patch on the game for it to run just a little better, but we can always hope that happens in the next DLC. Until then, I'll catch you guys next time.